So let me get this straight. The Dow Jones is right now sitting exactly where it was at, give or take 100 points, on September 6th and September 9th of 2024. That's where the markets are at today. If you drop the hysteria for a second, if you just strip that all down, were you being told back in early September that, oh my gosh, your portfolio is in an awful position and you can't possibly fathom the idea of moving forward, preparing for retirement? Maybe you're within a few years of retirement. Were you thinking that? Were you being told that back in September? Of course you weren't. I mean, you know the answer and I know the answer. I just wanted to ask you here at 6:05 on a Thursday morning on KCMO. That way we are on the same page. So yesterday was just absolutely nuts. Markets flew up nearly 3,000 points after Trump made an announcement in the early afternoon that he would be pausing the tariffs for 90 days on everybody except for China. Except for China. Of course, they got hit even harder with tariffs. So Trump's playing the game here. And depending on what and who you want to believe, this is either Donald Trump playing 4D chess or it's Trump basically capitulating because of what was happening yesterday in the overnight hours. And we talked about this when the show began yesterday, that basically the Japanese were dumping bonds and they looked at the situation and they said, you know what, that is not going to be good for America. That could potentially cause more chaos in the markets, and that will also then impact Main Street with potentially an increase in interest rates, mortgage rates, and everything else. So depending on how you want to look at this, Trump either temporarily made this look like he could get a win, get back to the negotiating table with these countries, while also realizing China is obviously the biggest threat. Or you sit there and you say this was always part of the plan. I don't know the answer, right? I have no idea. What I do know is that better policy prevailed here because the real bad actors are the Chinese. They're obviously the biggest problem that we've got when it comes to not just obviously international trade and them ripping us off and them devaluing their own currency to rip us off with their trade. But, you know, you've got a situation here where they're obviously a global threat as well. So better policy prevailed. That's how I look at this. I don't know the why behind it, whether it was a reaction to the markets. There's also a thought process here that when JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon went on TV yesterday with Maria Bartiromo and started using the R word, recession, that got Donald Trump going, and he said, all right, maybe I got to back off this for a little bit and see if we can strike some deals here. But to his credit, he's not backing off the Chinese. And that's what he posted yesterday on his Truth Social. He said, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to the matter. I love ending it like he's an HR director at like some Fortune 500 company for some, firm. I love that.
Yeah. Right. You could have put in there, P.S. And by the way, meetings will continue until morale approves around here. Right?
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Your prompt attention to this
What
matter.
a great way to end that post. So Charlie Gasparino at Fox Business, he's, of course, a friend of ours, University of Missouri graduate, one of the finest. He goes on Fox News yesterday after or as the markets are closing, because this skyrocketed the markets. Dow closed up nearly 3,000 points, one of its biggest gains on a percentage basis in the history of the stock market. And Charlie Gasparino shared what he is hearing on what exactly happened yesterday.
Well, I mean, because of the mixed messaging, how can you doubt them? I mean, let's be clear what happened. Who capitulated here and why? And, I don't want to say this because I'm a patriot. I'm an American. But it is the White House who capitulated based on everything I hear and all my sources. And the reason why is because of the bond market and what happened last night. Bessent knows this better than anybody. When you have yields on the 10-year rising to 5%, stuff starts shutting down when you have the lending markets screwed up. By the way, who was dumping the bonds? Somebody asked them if it was China, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't. It was Japan. While he was negotiating with Japan, according to my sources, who are running major money management firms that are involved in the bond market without giving up names, Japan was dumping bonds because they believed this was not a great place to do business. That forced their hands. Now, what you can say, I think, legitimately here, is Trump decided to take the win. And here's why. There was overwhelmingly, deal potential here among the entire world, except for maybe China, right? Everybody really wanted something. So he did take the win, but make no mistake about it. Peter Navarro was talking as of yesterday about not taking the win, and now they did. And it's all because of the bond market.
That was Fox Business's Charlie Gasparino yesterday on Fox News, of course, a good friend of the show here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Now, that is Charlie's reporting. I don't have anything to refute it at this point. I'll just say this. It doesn't really matter, right? To the rest of us, it doesn't really matter. Did Trump capitulate because of the bond market, or is this some type of 4D chess that was going on where he basically was able to prove that China is a bad actor on the world stage and doesn't want to negotiate with any other countries? Donald Trump, what he has to do right now is create an environment globally that the rest of the world sees the Chinese for what they are. And that is bad actors who will do whatever it takes with their own people and also with the markets worldwide to basically gain as much power as they possibly can around the globe. That has to be what Donald Trump pivots to next. He's got to cut deals. And also in these deals, he has to make it very clear to these other countries that it's us or them. And you do not want to pick them unless you want to be speaking Chinese by 2050 when the Chinese take over the whole world, John.
We use the word capitulation. It's all semantics right now. It's the art of the deal. Trump's a businessman. This is all very transparent and being played out on the stage with the media's help, of course. They want to see him fall down, so meanwhile they're reporting everything. But that's just the way these deals go, right?
Yep, that's the way.
Give and take.
The media loves this.
Mm-hmm.
They love the idea of trying to, obviously, make Donald Trump look like he took a loss. I'm not saying that about Charlie. I'm just speaking about the media in general. Charlie's got very good sources, very good reporting, but it doesn't matter. Let the cable news pundits play that game on who wins and who loses. I don't care about that part. What does it mean for us? What does it mean for the country? And what does it mean for the short term and the long term? Well, the Dow futures are down 500 points right now, so we're not going to be picking up where we left off yesterday, where things are skyrocketing up to the green. But still, for now, things have calmed down. And the minute that Trump starts cutting some of these deals, the better off everybody's going to be. The better off the U.S. is going to be. The better off the world is going to be. But the key part of this is not just cutting deals, but making sure these other countries realize we have got to reduce our reliancy on the Chinese. We have to be able to figure out a way to circumvent China when it comes to, everything from pharmaceuticals to the crap kids' toys that, let's be honest, we all have if you have young kids lying around the house. 4 to 5 toys are made out of China. It's impossible to not have this stuff come from China. I suppose you could have kids with less toys, and certainly that's a conversation worth having for many of us. But we'll save that one for another day as well. How can you figure out a way? How can Donald Trump lead the world in an awareness campaign on this and understanding the value of reducing the importance of the Chinese on so much in the global markets and global trade? He may have a tough time with some countries because obviously he's ticked off a few people, but you know what? In the end, I think it'll be just fine. 913-408-7957. That's our text line and our studio line on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And Guy Benson was on the show yesterday. He is coming to Kansas City Thursday, June 12th, for a meet and greet dinner and drinks event. You can get your tickets now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. Do not miss it. I'll be there. Keatsman will be there. It'll be a great time.
Guy and producer Christina are very excited on social media about this.
I know.
I was seeing the mentions on our Twitter yesterday.
They are fired up. They talked about it at the end of Guy's show yesterday at about 4:50. And I guess now other cities are jealous that Guy's coming here. I guess they heard from folks in Chicago at the WLS and their radio station and affiliate in Boise, Idaho, and a couple others who are not happy. Well, they're happy that Guy's coming to Kansas City. They're just jealous, and they want Guy to come to their town. But, hey, we got the pull around here. We made it happen. I don't know what to tell you. So we're looking forward to that event, and you can buy your tickets now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. So Quentin Lucas yesterday goes on ABC. He's warming up for his big hit on KCMO Talk Radio this morning. That's coming up in about 1 hour at 7:30. So he goes on ABC, and he's talking about how Kansas City is doing its job to try to hire and help out laid-off federal workers through this group called Civic Match. Civic Match is an organization that connects skilled public servants with impactful roles in state and local government. Could you get a real job, please? I know, I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, coming from a guy who gets to do this for a living. But you get my point. There is a world outside of government. And I'm not sitting here saying that you have to necessarily pursue that. But this notion that we're looking at people who have been let go courtesy of DOJ as these sympathetic victims is so infuriating when here in the private sector, those of us who live in this world deal with this all the time. Personally, with our friends, with our families, maybe you have dealt with it, we've dealt with it, right? This is just part of life in the private sector. But now you get a small percentage, let's be very clear, a small percentage of federal employees who lose their job. And what happens? You get organizations that start showing up and saying, hey, we're here to help. We're here to make sure you get your next government job. What's wrong with the private sector? If you have skills that translate, and God willing you do, I want every person in the workforce to have some type of desirable skill set. It would seem to me that it would be not easy, but you would be able to find something that actually might pay better than the public sector. There's a thought as well. So here was ABC News yesterday. Mayor Lucas found himself on there talking about this group Civic Match and how Kansas City is working with this organization to try to hire at the city level federal employees who may have been let go courtesy of DOJ.
Turn to Mayor Lucas to talk about this program and the kinds of opportunities that are available and why you're doing it when you're responsible for the city government. Here's federal workers going through this. Talk about that.
Well, first things first, the last 30 minutes that I've been watching your program, I think lays out that things don't have to be this way. You just heard from a federal worker who moved halfway across the country to serve her country. And so the first thing that we do as mayors, whether it is a disaster, a natural one, or economic impacts, is try to make sure that we can give comfort to the people of our communities. Civic Match came to us actually long before this and talking about how we can match talented Americans with opportunities in state and local government. I don't think any of us ever expected that we would find a situation where thousands of exceedingly talented people who have been doing good work are laid off, are cut.
But how do we know they're all exceedingly talented? Of course, I mean, there's no way to answer that question.
Well, you can tell by the way they decorate the home office.
Yeah, I suppose that's one way to figure it out there, John. How does their cubicle look? How's it dressed up? There's no way to answer that question. I mean, maybe some are exceedingly talented. Maybe it is, a LIFO situation, last in, first out, which is a large part of how they did some of these terminations and did some of these layoffs. But you can't say that everybody is exceedingly talented. I mean, I work, obviously, here. We've got 7 radio stations, and I promise you, not everybody is exceedingly talented. Just a fact. I mean, John is. Mark is. I have good days and bad days. But not everybody that you work with is exceedingly talented. That's not the way the world works. So I don't understand this but works for the federal government must be a genius. No. I mean, you work in the real world, you got really good employees. You got some hanger-oners. You got some people who could be great but are a little lazy. Why is that not also true in the public sector? Of course it is.
Out of positions, largely for almost no reason. It isn't balancing a budget. It isn't addressing a core governmental need. In many ways, it seems more malicious than anything.
Oh, come on, Mayor Q. You're better than that. You're better than that. You are. I mean, listen, I know you go on ABC News, and you got to tell ABC News what they want to hear. But come on. The mayor's better than that. I mean, he knows how to play the small C conservative when he wants to, and I just think he's better than commentary like that. And if part of the strategy moving forward for the Democratic Party is going to be based around this idea of the government workers getting screwed, I don't think that is going to play well politically. It might work in the bubble, but on Main Street, creating the public sector employee into this incredibly sympathetic figure because some folks lost their jobs to, yes, try to roll back a bloated federal government, which it is. I mean, Joe Biden spent 4 years growing the government. You tell me the services drastically improve? Of course not. They rarely ever do. That's where you got to sit back and you got to say, you know what? When you can't afford something, cuts have to be made. And there's a lot that this government cannot afford right now, and I hope they cut even deeper.
The issue is they're not whacking enough.
Oh, let's make those showers great again, baby. You're getting set to go in the shower. Maybe you're just walking out. You're drying off. You got us on your Google Home, your Alexa, your phone, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Tell me that you guys are not soft shower guys. You like a nice hard stream there in the shower, or do you like it to kind of dribble on you there? What do you prefer there, Mark?
Oh, yeah, I need the full-on water.
All right, there you
no
go.
dribbles.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. We don't have any dribblers around here. Good. That's what I like to hear.
If I did, I'd need to call the plumbing pro.
I know. You
it.
would. That's right. And they would take great care of you. Well, right now, you've got President Trump, amidst all the excitement yesterday with the stock markets, he signed an executive order to remove limitations on water pressure from shower heads. And he is, as they say, making showers great again. Let's go. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Let's make those showers great again, baby. This was actually something that he did during his first administration, and then Joe Biden rolled it back. And it was all about how much water you were allowed to have come out of your shower head per minute. So this was something that Donald Trump wanted to, and he actually talked about it a couple of times on the campaign trail, and he got it done yesterday. He signed an executive order that repeals the 13,000-word regulation defining shower head. It specifically directs the Secretary of Energy to rescind the regulation defining shower head. a change that affects how the water flow standard is enforced and removes the current limit. That's right. So here was Donald Trump yesterday in the Oval Office signing this executive order. And standing right next to him was our old pal Will Scharf. Will Scharf ran for Attorney General here in Missouri. He lost the primary to the incumbent Andrew Bailey last year. Well, now he's the White House secretary. He's the guy who stands next to Trump and explains the executive order. Yes, sir, here's your order to make showers great again. And then Trump has some commentary, and then he signs the little EO there.
He gets a lot of airtime.
Oh, yeah. He's I don't think a lot of people would know his name, Will Scharf, but they would know his face because he's always standing to Donald Trump's right in the Oval Office as he gets set to sign the executive order. So it's not bad. If you can't be the Attorney General in Missouri, you can be the guy that's handing Trump his executive orders and explaining to him how he's about to make showers great again. So here it was yesterday in the Oval Office.
The Biden administration launched what you called a war on showers. They had certain regulations that basically killed the water pressure of showers and other water appliances.
You can say it. Go ahead. What are the appliances?
I mean, it's everything, sir.
Sinks and toilets.
Dishwashers, toilets, sinks. But the shower heads are a
There's
huge
no
deal.
water. You don't get water. It's ridiculous.
So with this executive order, we're effectively going to be reversing that set of regulations to ensure that Americans have choice in the consumer market. If they want a low-flow shower head, they can buy one. If they want a real deal shower head, they should have the ability to
You buy a new house, you pay a lot of money, and the developers, you're not allowed to do anything more. They put restrictors on. They used to have a restrictor where you could take it out, but now they weld it in. And you take a shower or wash your hands, whatever you do, including dishwashers when no water comes out. But you wash your hands, and in my case, I like to take a nice shower to take care of my beautiful hair. I have to stand under the shower for 15 minutes till it gets wet. It comes out drip, drip, drip. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, he says there. So that's Trump getting set to sign this executive order. Will Scharf was the first voice you heard there. He's the secretary for the White House, and he's the guy who, explains to Trump what he's about to sign, and then he hands him the big binder, and Trump signs it and shows off his signature, and everyone claps, and, away we go. So what this does is it basically takes the limits of 2.5 gallons per minute off of shower head nozzles. And that was something that came under the Obama administration. Trump relaxed those during his first term in office, and then Biden reinstituted those in the last 4 years. And Trump yesterday just whacked them. So we are making showers great again in this country. Maybe the most underrated part of Donald Trump's first 2.5 months in office is making showers great again. But, in all seriousness, why should the government tell you how much water you can use when you're taking a shower? Like, why? What would be next? How warm your water can be? How cold your water can be? As long as you're willing to pay for it, if you're open to having a massive water bill, then you know what? That's on you. It's just like the guy who, waters his lawn every single day more than he needs to. We all have that neighbor, right? He's got to have the perfect lawn. He's watering it more than 3-4 times a week because it's got to be as pristine as it possibly can be. And I'm not going to lie. I may be that guy in 30 years. I could see myself being that person. But for now, I'll make fun of that guy. As long as he's willing to pay the water bill, why is it my business? I mean, the idea that Obama and Biden thought it was a good idea to restrict how much water was coming out of a shower head in the name of lowering your utility bill and conserving water and energy resources. I didn't realize we were living in North Korea here. And Trump's like, you know what? Take a shower, take whatever you want. You got to take care of that hair, right? Yeah, I got to take care of that hair. His hair is pretty damn good, so I understand why he's got to do it. But for the rest of us, it's like, just leave me alone. Okay, I don't need you regulating my showers. I don't need you regulating the shower heads that we're buying. I don't. If I want a lower utility bill, I know how to do that. So do most Kansas Cityans. So we'll all pump the brakes here and just relax for a couple of minutes. 913-408-7957 is the studio line and the text line on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, I have never been so proud to support Donald Trump. Oh, come on now. Come on. Oh, man. On the text line, Pete, Will Scharf is world famous. Hey, I'm just proud to see a Missouri boy get his big break. If you can't be the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, the next best thing is being the White House press secretary, explaining how it's imperative that we roll back shower head regulations. There you go. That's what it takes. 913-408-7957. Long hot showers are as American as baseball and apple pie. That's what I'm talking about. That's great. That's absolutely fantastic. I love that. Oh. Now, last night, if you missed it, let's go to CNN here for a couple of minutes. Anderson Cooper was doing a town hall with Bernie Sanders. Because, yes, if there is a lesson for the Democratic Party, it is we need more Bernie Sanders right now. It's exactly what the party needs, says nobody ever. But I guess on CNN, they think it's a good idea. So, whatever. They do a little town hall with Bernie Sanders last night on CNN. And the thing that went the most viral was not about Bernie talking about, giving away other people's money, charging Elon Musk a 99% tax rate. That is not what went viral from last night. Instead, what it was this moment.
We're back with Senator Bernie Sanders. I want to introduce Grace Thomas. She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
Say them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
Good evening, Senator Sanders. Polling and turnout data indicate that men of all racial demographics are turning away from the Democratic Party.
Anderson Cooper got gender checked, is what happened there.
She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
Say them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
That right there is the party in a nutshell. That's it. Town hall, Bernie Sanders trying to figure out, hey, how do we turn this thing around? How do we get back to winning elections? And an innocent moment where Anderson Cooper is trying to show, respect for somebody in the audience who's about to ask a question, and he gets gender checked. That is a perfect encapsulation of where the party finds itself right now. Anderson Cooper, Bernie Sanders, and a fact-checking they-them in real time on live TV. And Anderson Cooper has to play along with it. Deep down, I guarantee you, he's like, you've got to be kidding me. But he can't say anything about it because then he's some kind of a phobe, right? He can't, no, don't you dare. No, don't.
How dare you?
Don't you say anything, Anderson. You keep that to yourself, buddy. If not, you're going to get canceled, okay? That's how the game is played. Welcome to the party in 2025. Well, get those tickets to see Guy Benson June 12th here in Kansas City at Boulevard. We'll be in their suite, and you can buy your tickets now for the meet and greet at KCMOTalkRadio.com. They are on sale, and they will go fast. We are keeping this event to a couple hundred folks. So get online, go to the website, KCMOTalkRadio.com, and buy your tickets. I'll be out there. Keatsman is, of course, going to join us as well for this special event with Guy Benson coming to Kansas City, Fox News contributor, and, of course, syndicated host here on KCMO. So we've got some inflation news. March numbers have come in below expectations. Man,
talk about a bombshell.
Let's go. 2.4% below the expectations of 2.5%. Core CPI fell to 2.8%. That is a good number as well. That excludes food and energy. And that was below the expectations of 3%. This is now 2 straight months, basically the first 2 full months of Donald Trump's tenure, that the monthly decline in headline and core CPI inflation has come in. Inflation has cooled down despite the trade war. Now, maybe this changes with April, of course, being the month when the trade war really got going. But there was also an expectation that inflation might run hot in March because a lot of businesses were basically front-loading supplies from overseas to get ahead of the tariffs. And at least as of now, maybe that wouldn't show itself in this inflation report, but at least as of now, that hasn't happened. I'm not sitting here saying everything is perfect and that this inflation number may not tick up again based on what's going on here right now, but you've got 2 full months of this guy in office, and both of these months, you have seen inflation come in below expectations. When you look at that 2.8% core CPI excluding food and energy, that is the lowest rate for core inflation since March of 2021, which was, of course, month 2 of Joe Biden's term in office. So say what you want, but right now, you're looking at some of these numbers, right? You have a jobs report last week that comes in 100,000 over expectations. Now you have inflation that comes in below expectations in some of the best numbers you've seen in about 4 years. And at some point, you got to sit there and say to yourself, well, something's working, right? For all the doom and gloom and we're all going to die and the markets are going off a cliff and recessions are coming and the whole thing, I can't predict the future. All I can do is look at the data that we've got. And the data that we have gotten, this is now the second good piece of Main Street economic news in the last week. Jobs up 100,000 over expectations on Friday, and inflation coming in below expectations, approaching that 2% number, which is the Fed's target. And once again, probably surprising some of the so-called experts. Wow. So this just came down here in the last 15 minutes or so. And right now, you got a headline CPI that's 40 basis points above the Fed's 2% target. Inflation down 60 basis points over the last 3 months alone. You know what? I mean, scream all you want. All the hysteria that you'll see on cable news and on social media. The numbers right now are looking actually pretty good. And a lot of this, I think, is tied to what's going on with energy. And also, at the very least, you look at some of the cuts that are happening in government, it's not hurting. It's just not. When jobs numbers are up and inflation is down, all this stuff about how are we ever going to survive without, a bloated federal government? Looking okay. Looking all right. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, an old tweet from the president going back over 10 years has resurfaced. We'll tell you why. Plus, we got the Alabama Lee Greenwood tickets at 8:45. Let's go back a little bit in the old tweets. What do you say? Good morning, 8:05. It is great to be here on KCMO. This resurfaced yesterday from December 29th of 2014. A very old tweet from the president, the now president of the United States. Back then, he was just a guy, I say this, just a guy on TV who happened to also be a billionaire real estate mogul. But still, here's what Donald Trump posted at 10:39 in the morning on December 29th of 2014. Quote, "Deals are my art form. Other people paint beautifully or write poetry. I like making deals, preferably big deals. That's how I get my kicks."
Such a cute soundbite.
That is a tweet that the president, then private citizen Donald Trump put up, 10 years and 4 months ago. How about that, John? Here we are.
I can give you one that frost my you-know-what from about 40 years ago, and that's the deal he made to steal Gary Barbaro from the Chiefs for the New Jersey Generals. But I digress.
Well, whether it was wheeling and dealing with the New Jersey Generals or it was wheeling and dealing in real estate or now wheeling and dealing on global trade, it's always been something that, as he writes here, gave him his kicks. That's how he got them. Going back now, 50 years. And yesterday, of course, you had an insane turnaround in the stock market after the president announced that he was pausing the tariffs, down to 10% for everybody except for China, who got bumped up to 125%. Now, Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary, And he had some interesting comments on this as to how this happened and why this happened. But first things first, this was the right move. I had his back the whole time, no matter what, but this was the right move and just a policy tweak, not a policy change, but a policy tweak. Because now the goal is going to be to get all these countries aligned, renegotiate some of these deals with the United States, and then the most important part of this is to make sure that the world is unified with the United States against the Chinese. And that's not going to be easy because most of the developed world is addicted to cheap crap from China. Let's be very clear about that. It will not be an easy task for the President of the United States, but that is the ultimate goal here. And Scott Bessent referenced that yesterday, Treasury Secretary talking about the strategy here. Here's what he said.
And all this was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. And that, you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors. And we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well. Hopefully that ends up being true. But as Scott Bessent noted there, basically, this shows China for who they are. If there was ever a doubt among some world leaders that you've got some bad actors in China, led by President Xi, how does the last week not confirm this to you? I mean, what more do you need? Now, if you just say, hey, it's worth it to me to get cheap crap from China, and, I'm willing to take the risk that they may try to basically have us all speak in Mandarin by 2050, I guess that's your prerogative. But if you have any type of long game in your body, if you're a world leader, you've got to at least admit that the path that we're on is not a healthy one. It's not a stable one, and that the Chinese Communist Party has bad intentions for more people beyond the 1.5 billion who live inside of their country, right? I mean, that's something, even you look at locally, right? Whether it's Emmanuel Cleaver, Sharice David, some of the folks who are on the other side of the aisle, they haven't really gone all in going anti-Trump on this strategy. They've been upset with Doge. I mean, Cleaver's gone nuts. He's been at these rallies. He's given these bizarre rants. I mean, he's doing all the above.
You mustard moo.
But he hasn't really gone all in against the president on things like these tariffs and trying to reestablish some of the deals that we have around the world when it comes to trade. Now, the media has done that because they just have to do everything and anything against this president.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting what your politicians do not freak out about and what they don't say. And I think there's a part of the Democratic Party deep down that agrees with this and is actually kind of playing this game of like, you know what, Trump's doing things that we haven't had the stones to do. It might actually hurt him politically, even though deep down we know it's the right thing. So from their perspective, they're like, hey, this may help us politically, but Trump's the one who's going to take all the slings and arrows.
Well, he doesn't need it politically. He's already successful. Most of these clowns need the politics to generate their wealth.
Well, that's a great point as well.
So he's excluded from that to the point that he is a threat and has shaken up the status quo. That's why he's not liked in D.C., and therefore the media, but shaking up the gravy train and the status quo on the world stage. So, of course, Europe's going to complain.
Yeah.
They're going to have to kick up some more money here, pay for more NATO, et cetera.
Yes.
So we can always find the one guy who wants to whine and complain, and boy, the media's got a microphone for that person, don't they?
Oh, they do. But locally, I just find it fascinating that for all the complaining and moaning that, Cleaver's been doing here, and Sharice to a lesser extent, they're being pretty quiet on this one. And then I found this old clip of Chuck Schumer, of course, Senate Minority Leader out of New York, and it made me realize that maybe that's because deep down they're on board. Here's an old Chuck Schumer clip 2017.
I tend to more agree with President Trump than I did with President Obama on Bush on trade. The whole idea for China manipulating their currency, I learned about them when I visited with Macney. I visited Crucible Steel here in Syracuse, and they were telling me back then how their steel products had an unfair advantage because China was manipulating its currency. That's how the whole issue came to the fore, because I happened to visit Crucible Steel back in 2004 or 5, sometime like that. So I hope he's really tough on China, on both North Korea, and on treating us fairly in terms of trade.
That was Chuck Schumer less than 8 years ago. I hope he's tough on China. We know they manipulate their currency. We know they screw us on trade. We know it's impacted American jobs. That's the same guy who is right now the Senate Minority Leader. I think deep down they know that he's doing the right thing. They can never admit it because, well, their friends in the media won't allow them to. But maybe I want to see the best in people or the worst, depending on how you look at it. But I'm like, you guys know this is the right thing to do. You know it deep down. You just can't help yourselves.
Well, he was patting himself on the back, and I didn't find out just because I happened to go to Syracuse.
Yeah,
I'm like, come on.
I stumbled upon a steel mill by accident.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, Chuck, I mean, can you just...
If I hadn't gone there, I don't know what...
If I didn't end up in that steel mill because I got lost on a highway in Syracuse, New York, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did, Chuck. And it seems like you've got some amnesia like everybody else in Congress because you forgot about that steel mill you stumbled upon in Syracuse, or you just don't care about it anymore, right? Because they're losing that working class base in their party. They've lost it because they've been too busy catering to people who want to get 7 PhDs and talk about how there's 7 genders. Like, no, come back. Come back and cater to that working class guy and gal who loves this country, who just wants to show up to work every day, make some scratch, own a home, not be in a ton of debt, live a simple but decent life. Come back to that.
Walk to the light, Carol Ann. They used to say in Poltergeist movie.
It's not bad. I'm telling you, life's good. You can join us, and then guess what? You can work. There is work to be done and deals to be made that will actually benefit your political base. That's the thing about Trump that I think gets wildly misunderstood. The media created this narrative that he's like this far-right guy. In fact, a lot of these policies were policies that Democrats were on board with as recently as just a few years ago. Trump gets his rocks off on deals, not being a political ideologue. And if you haven't figured that out by now, you got to stop watching Rachel Maddow. Or is it Chris Hayes? They look the same. I can't tell them apart. They got the same haircut. I don't know what to tell you. It's too much. I try to put on the show. I'm like, am I watching Chris Hayes or Rachel Maddow? It just depends on who's got the shorter sideburns on a given day. 913-408-7957 to join us on KCMO. We got the Alabama Lee Greenwood tickets coming up here in a half hour. You want to talk about loving America? Man, that's going to be a good one. 913-408-7957. And we still have to get to this in the hour. How does a 9-year-old in one of our 2 states end up driving himself to school? And should there be any kind of a punishment? We'll get to that bottom of the hour. But I know you want to chime in. I know you want to get in the mix here. We will do that next on KCMO 95.7 FM. Great point on the text line. You guys are on fire this morning. Happy Thursday. Thanks for joining us on 95.7 FM. Pete, the way to tell the difference when you're watching MSNBC every night between Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow is that Rachel Maddow has the Adams apple. That's a great point.
This is absolutely lit. This is lit.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well done on the that's the text of the day. We don't do anything with the text of the day, but that's got to be the text of the day right there. Oh, jeez. Market's opening up in 8 minutes. Dow is off 500 points. Good inflation news this morning coming in at the lowest numbers in 4 years, 2.4%, below the expectations of 2.5%. The Fed's target is for 2%. So that's for March. Second straight month, this president's been in office for a full month, and the inflation numbers come in below expectations. So let's go to Tom. He's in Overland Park, 913-408-7957. Hop on board. What's up, Tom?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Pete. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I've been called much worse, so that's totally fine. What's up there, Pete? Oh, sorry, Tom.
Well, great points about China, but one thing I think is going to force our hand in the next 20 to 30 years is that the birth rate has bottomed out, and therefore the labor replacement rate in China has bottomed out because they misestimated their labor replacement rate from the one-child policy. So this cheap labor, whether we like it or not, may be gone in 30, possibly 50 years even. So this is going to force our hand anyway. So it's best to start changing our policies now because, like it or not, the cheap goods, cheap labor at least, may go away sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah, they got 1.5 billion people. I mean, you're right. It may be. I just think it may be later than sooner. I mean, I'm not sure any of us will be around when that does end up being a problem for the Chinese. I want to be as optimistic as you, Tom, but I think it's going to take a little longer than 30 to 50 years.
Well, it may not be a complete bottom out, but let's say 10%, 15% is an impact on the cost of labor. I mean, so, we're going to have to start looking at markets closer to home. It'd be more advantageous even if it went down or an increase of labor rate 15 to 20% for the cost of labor over there because of the labor shortage, then it's no-brainer to me is to look at labor sources closer to home and do fair trade with countries that are in our hemisphere. And especially when we see things like the Chinese trying to influence the control of the Panama Canal, that's a whole other economic issue that we haven't even really dove into is their influence in other parts of the world. So, we got to be on the right path, and it's something that has to be bipartisan.
Yeah, and it should be bipartisan. You're right about that, Tom. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. 913-408-7957. Something that, and we'll get to your calls here, something that got overlooked during all the tariff stuff over the last week or so was that Trump told Taiwan that he would he told some of the businesses that operate out of Taiwan that he would slap them with some pretty big tariffs if they did not figure out ways to make their chips and build some of the semiconductors in the U.S. Because Taiwan is an X factor in all this. So much of the growth in the AI space with these chips and whatnot are made in Taiwan. We know that China has its eyes set on Taiwan. They're, of course, someone that we have said publicly and have obviously been in a relationship with privately for years now that we would defend. If Xi wants to take this thing to the next level and he wants to really get aggressive and he goes into Taiwan, that is a major problem for the United States. And it's something that when you talk about that next potentially, I mean, that's like a worst case scenario because then what does the United States do? And that's why Trump is trying to get some of these companies and these chip makers to build semiconductors in the U.S. and get these things out of Taiwan. And it's not, meant to be an anti-Taiwan thing. It's meant to be an anti-China thing. If you've got very important manufacturing being done in a place that the Chinese have their eyes set and taken over, that's not good for foreign policy. It's not good for national security. So that part of the equation has got to be looked at as well. 913-408-7957. Mark, if we could roll that Kevin Hassett clip. Kevin Hassett is part of the administration. He's the director of the National Economic Council to the United States. He was just on Fox a few minutes ago, and here's what he said.
I think that what's been going on all along is the president recognizes that in order to get the big change that we need for America's workers, like these are really fundamental changes that we're talking about, that we need to create enough pressure on our trading partners that things that American presidents have been asking for the last decades are actually offered at the table. I can say that I was on a call with the Swiss president yesterday with President Trump. We've got a whole system set up through Susie Wiles and the cabinet secretaries that we're starting to have a meeting today after lunch where we prioritize our allies and other countries and decide who or what is going to visit and when. But I can tell you that the amount of stuff that's coming to the table came up really a lot, long before the market movements this week. And so it was looking like that there had been enough action to get us to the point where we should really genuinely start negotiating. And if you go back and look, you can see the negotiation signals were out there already, even on that Monday where somebody made a fake tweet that suddenly said that I was saying something that ended up being kind of mostly true on Wednesday. And so anyway, I think that everything was moving forward in an orderly fashion, and there's no doubt that the Treasury market yesterday made it so that the decision that, it's about time to move was made, I think, with perhaps a little more urgency, but it was going to happen at any moment anyway.
That was Kevin Hassett, National Economic Council Director on CNBC, not Fox, this morning here on KCMO. And he said it loud and clear. What's been going on all along, the president recognizes that in order to get the big change that we need for America's workers, we need to create pressure on our trading partners. Most importantly, and obviously at the top of the list, is China. Well, the market sell-off is happening today after the massive gain yesterday. Dow closing up nearly 3,000 points, the most points on record. But this morning, Dow's opening up off about 800, NASDAQ's down 600, and the S&P also in line with those two, down about 3% so far in early trading. But the good news is this. Inflation came in below expectations this morning for the month of March. So this is something that came as a bit of a surprise in the early morning hours. At about 7:30, this dropped. Inflation rate came down to 2.4%, below the expectations of 2.5%. And when you take out food and energy, so-called core inflation ran at 2.8%. And that is the lowest rate for core inflation since March of 2021. What more do you need when it comes to evidence and data to suggest blowing out the budget, blowing out the deficit, printing money, and making the dollar less valuable and growing government is an utter failure for the majority of Americans who are not working in the government? So annual inflation was reaccelerating from September through January. But the last 2 months in office, or the last 2 months during Donald Trump's first 2 full months in office, you have seen those numbers come down, wiping out the increases that came from September through January. It's almost like all we needed was a new president.
Such a nice man.
It's almost like that's what we needed just to try to get things back on track. Now, I understand there's a lot of chaos and uncertainty in the markets. We've talked a lot about what that's going to look like and why that's happening right now as we try to reestablish not just our trade deals with the entire world, but most importantly, the relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. And the goal here for the president of the United States should be a very simple one. Cut good deals and fair deals with our allies around the world, and then create and make sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to doing what needs to be done to decouple all of our economies from China, or at least have far less reliance on China when it comes to our economies, not just here in the United States, but frankly around the rest of the world. Like that's what needs to be top of mind right now. So you also saw that when it comes to real average weekly earnings, that number has gone up the last 2 months. That's something that we have not seen over the last few years. Under the last administration, average Americans' weekly paychecks, when adjusted for inflation, fell by 4% under President Biden. You now have seen those numbers grow each of the first 2 months under President Trump. Now, I know this is going to shock you, but I just went to Kansas City Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver's X page. And while he has been X-posting this morning, he has not put anything up about these inflation numbers. The only thing that he posted this morning is, quote, as global temperatures continue to rise. Oh, come on. You got to be kidding me. As global temperatures continue to rise, it's imperative that Congress provide families with innovative ways to beat the heat and lower energy costs. He has introduced the Cool Roof Rebate Act. That sounds like one of his specials from his car wash days. The Cool Roof Rebate Act. With a couple other Congress members, one out of North Carolina and another one out of California, to do just that. Why is it somebody, please tell Emmanuel Cleaver, every time you guys get more involved in anything, the price of that anything seems to go up. Just like Obamacare was going to lower all of our health insurance prices. I don't know about you. I see mine. I see what's taken out of my paycheck every other week, and it's not my company's fault. It's the fact that the rates continue to go up because the sector of healthcare is out of control. But more government was supposed to lower all our prices. What happened to that? Oh, you mean it doesn't work that way?
I got this cool website.
I know.
That rollout. Gee, Merry Christmas.
So this is now, Cleaver is very proud of the fact that he has introduced the Cool Roof Rebate Act. Legislation to create a rebate program for reflective roofing products to lower home temperatures and reduce energy consumption and costs. Anytime you guys say, I'm here from the government and I'm going to reduce your costs, the opposite seems to happen here, John.
Meanwhile, back home in his district, residents are being displaced from their home by the county taxes. So
yeah,
that's if you can afford your roof, you can get a rebate.
How about he gets his butt back here and talks to his buddy Frank White?
A little bit of help.
And tells him to stop screwing the Jackson County homeowner. I'm telling you right now, you talk to any Jackson County homeowner, they're much more concerned about their property taxes than they are their air conditioning bill. And on top of that, guess what? The president is working on those energy prices, working on reducing those energy prices. That's happening right now. You look at some of the data that's out there. We've seen in this latest inflation report that came out this morning, 2.4% decrease in energy prices, 6.3% decrease in gas prices, 1.4% growth in real average hourly earnings, 2% decrease in prescription drug prices, and a continued slowing of egg prices. America is back. Inflation is not. That's how you reduce the prices for people. You deregulate and you create a favorable climate for more supply of whatever it is you're trying to reduce the price of, in this case, energy. And magically it happens. It doesn't take some government bill with a cute little name from Emmanuel Cleaver like the Cool Rebate Act to get energy prices down. It doesn't. I get it sounds good on paper. It maybe looks good because what they do is they say, I'm from the government. I have a bill to help you. The other approach, the approach that actually works is, you know what? I'm going to let business help you, and I'm going to create a climate and a business environment that rewards them for helping you, rewards them by lowering your prices, allows them to supply more services or supply more goods, which in a supply and demand world naturally brings down prices, not the government artificially doing it. And that is so difficult for people from a business perspective when all they've done in their lives is go belly up on car washes when it comes to like actual business in their professional lives. It's difficult for folks like that to really understand this concept. And I'm sorry, Mr. Cleaver. I'm sorry if that's a little too rough, but let's be honest. I mean, that's the reality here. That's it when it comes to any private sector experience. You can call me whatever you want.
You mustard moo.
You call me whatever you want. I don't care. Those are the facts. 913-408-7957. I mean, these are very good numbers this morning. And Trump did post on his Truth Social here 33 minutes ago. Just out, all caps, inflation is down. That's what he put up here on social media just a half hour ago. So when you actually look at some of the things happening on Main Street right now, yes, the tariffs are a concern. I'm not saying it's all a utopia today, but there are things that, frankly, are not going to get as much attention today in the news cycle because everyone's just looking at, like, the NASDAQ, when there are signs that for Main Street, things are absolutely improving. And I'm not about hurting Wall Street to help Main Street. It's not either or. You can have an economy, and we saw it during, Trump 1.0, where Main Street does well, average hourly earnings go up. The folks who make less money actually gain more than those in the higher end. That happened during Trump's first term in office. Wages for the lowest end of the socioeconomic spectrum actually gained more on a percentage basis than those at the higher end. And then Wall Street also can kick butt in the process. It's not an either or proposition. Never has been.